Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Joanna Danielle. I'm founder of Wounds to Scars. And I am here every day, not every day this week, but Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, going through the story of the woman at the well, just kind of ending the Come See a Man series that I've been doing, ending it here on YouTube and on Facebook, just talking through some of the themes from that story from a counselor perspective. So I'm not a theologian, so I'm not going into Hebrew and the language of the New Testament. Excuse me. I'm just talking from a perspective of a counselor and somebody who've been working with trauma for many years, and just some of the themes that I see when I read the story or when I watch it, that I see comes up. What makes what are some of the things that could cause impact relationally that she could experience, that had five husbands, didn't have any friends. Not that we're blaming her for that. And as if you watched yesterday, you would see where I talk about the divorce. Like, a woman in her time perhaps couldn't do the divorce. A man could do the divorce. And so some of the reasons why she had five husbands may not be because of anything to do with her. But we also want to also look at her, and if you see yourself mirrored in her life, maybe five husbands, maybe not five husbands, but relationally you might be struggling. You may not be able to hold on to friendships, and some of the reasons. It's really important, without blaming. It's really important for us to understand. Welcome, I can see that somebody's here. It's really important for us to understand how trauma affects us, some of the things that happens to us that we may dismiss as not important, but they still have an impact on us relationally. So I going deep into the mother-daughter relationship would be a completely different webinar altogether. And the father-daughter relationship will be also completely. So I'm going to combine them today for the purposes of this video, so that we're not here for an hour, right? We could be here for hours as I unpack culture and the mother-daughter relationship and religion, and some of the things, some of the themes from those big issues, or big areas in our lives, and how those contribute to how we relate to people and how we function and show up in relationships. And then we could do that with the father-daughter relationship and continue to unpack how those show up and what are some of those things, and our culture, the influence in things around culture, and how that impacts how we function and do relationships on a whole, right? But here, so if we think about, I have an infographic that I probably will share with you on Facebook. And if you think about it as a tree, the relationship, and we're a tree, and so the root of the tree would be the mother-daughter relationship, the father, the parental connection or lack of connection with our parents. One of the damaging thing for children is whatever else we experience, when we also have abandonment wounds, when we have rejection wounds, those sometimes are the places that are, it's so deep that other things sometimes stack on top of those things, right? I remember somebody saying to me years ago that, the abuse was hard, Joanna, but what was worse was that my mother was unavailable. When you have a present but unavailable parent, that causes quite a lot of harm. So if we think about the root and some of the things that will be reflected in the root, right? So sometimes how we are relationally is the fruit of the root, not the root itself. It's when we can't manage conflict, when we are conflict avoidant, for example, when we struggle with communication, when we struggle with expressing our feelings, when we struggle with people pleasing and codependency, when we struggle with asking for what we need, when we struggle with vulnerability, when we struggle with really making ourselves vulnerable so that in a relationship we can function, that there's a root. I was doing the workshop on Saturday evening in a church, and the title for that I've been doing over January is the healing from the legacy of trauma. And there was a woman there that was really adamant that she didn't want to do vulnerability. Why do we have to make ourselves vulnerable? And I said, well, you don't have to do it. Nobody have to do anything. We don't have to do anything. We do it because it makes our relationship fuller, richer, and deeper. But we don't have to do it. And so every time somebody says vulnerability in the audience, I could see her stir. And so I know she was triggered by the word. Now, a word will trigger us when there's something that it resonates within us. And so I said, maybe there's something there for you to unpack. What is it about being vulnerable that makes you feel vulnerable, that makes you feel triggered? So let's look at the root. So at the root is rejection, abandonment, um, being unloved, unwanted, um, feeling. Somebody can feel motherless, unmothered. I found this term recently. Somebody can feel motherless and fatherless even when they're physically in the house, in the same house, because parents are busy and don't make time for connection. And I want to say this because I know sometimes in culture, in my culture certainly, and in sometimes religious setting, because we want to forgive, and forgiveness is good and right, not saying it isn't, but we choose to not work on the wound, and we forgive, believe in forgiveness is going to heal the wound. It won't heal the wound. Two things can be true. We can forgive, and we can still acknowledge, we can still love our parents, but we can still acknowledge the impact of the things that happen in relationship with them, right? Lots of parents know how to live for, but not how to live with. And I'm a parent, so I know the work of learning how to live with when you've not been lived with, right? I know the work that goes into unlearning and doing things in a different way. So some of the wounds that she might have, certainly feeling of being motherless, lots of questions. Why me? So sometimes here's some of the fruits. Here's some of the things that we do. There's anger problems sometimes because there's a not understanding how to manage emotions, because maybe you couldn't express it. You weren't free. She wasn't free to express it. So there might be anger. We know low self-esteem is a natural fallout of this lack of connection, because the mirrors are our parents, and when they don't reflect to us positivity and uh, uh, when they don't reflect our value to us in a positive way, then we go out in the world not sure who we are. And so when the world is shaping our view of ourselves, then it becomes difficult. So if she's been married to husband one and two, and he's also reflecting the same thing, because when you're used to being in a relationship, in a connection with caregivers that are dismissive, that are harmful, that don't value you, you will go into relationship with people who can't do that too, because it's natural, it's normal, it's the pattern that you're familiar with. Now we can work to break that pattern and do things differently. And when we talk about post-traumatic growth tomorrow, those are some of the things that we'll wonder with. Her time with Jesus, did it break those patterns for her? Could she go home and live a free life on her own, or was she able to integrate some of the grace and the love and the joy that he gave her into her life, and heal those wounds so that different patterns can be recreated? So low self-esteem, lack of boundaries. People without connection sometimes struggle to set boundaries because of the low self-esteem, because of the lack of connection, because of the dismissiveness, because of the not meeting your needs, because of the lack of acknowledging that you have needs. So some of those things. Sometimes we tend to be rescuers. I want to rescue people because sometimes we're rescuing ourselves, really, not necessarily the people, because of the feeling that it gives us as being wanted. And maybe if I people please, then they're going to want me, right? But of course, it's just a way again of recreating the same old feeling, because people, when they're rescued, they don't tend to come back, um, unaware of needs and can't express them because you were never taught how to. Nobody acknowledge and respect your needs. Also, feeling of being left out. Um, Sometimes people go inward, isolation. And if we think about this woman feeling of being left out, she was left out. Nobody went to the well with her. She had to go in the heat of the day when everybody else had come and gone, and she was on her own. Did she go inward as a coping strategy, or was she rejected also by the women, by the people by the people that was in her community? And so this pattern of rejection was continuing in her romantic relationships, in her interpersonal relationships. But I praise God for Jesus, because he went to the well to find her, to demonstrate for her that he wasn't going to abandon her, that he saw her. He spoke to her need. He spoke to her heart. He healed those wounds, and she left her water pot and ran in excitement, in joy. So somebody who was used to going inward and perhaps isolating, and low self-esteem and shame, which is a natural fruit, might make us not want to speak out. But here she is, she ran, she had joy, and joy might have been a new experience for her, because when we're carrying heavy stuff that must have been as heavy as her water pot, joy is not a feeling that somebody like that would be used to on a regular basis. But she ran, ran into the village, ran with joy, not with flooded with stress hormones of cortisol and all of that is harmful. She had a dopamine hit from being with him, and she ran, and it made her run into Samaria to go to tell everybody, come see a man. And that's the beautiful thing about post-traumatic growth. When we've done the work of processing and acknowledging, we can have safe connection with people that give us that dopamine hit, that help with the expression of joy and the feeling of joy. And she must have had a wonderful time with her, because sometimes integrating that feeling of joy into our lives and acting on it can take time, because we don't trust it. We don't trust. Is this safe enough for me to trust? Is this relationship going to be sustainable? Am I going to muck it up the way I do all the others? There's so many things that might be going on for her. But we see that one interaction was so reach in to the root of her rejection and resentment and feeling unloved. He called her, he may have called her by name. And so the expression of joy is a natural post-traumatic growth emotion that will be shown. Okay, some of the other fruits, relational challenges, also will be seen. But if you're on Facebook, the infographic will be posted there today. If you're not on Facebook and you're over on YouTube, come on over to the Facebook page at Wounds to Scars, where you'll see the infographic posted there. Now, these are some of the themes that we'll be dealing with in the Come See a Man conference, April 8 and 9 in Swansea, South Wales. We're in her early bird booking, and it's 27 days before early bird booking expires. I'm going to put the link below this video or above this video, wherever you're watching us from. Please register before it's too late. Don't lose out on early bird booking. Everybody who books in early bird booking gets a copy of our devotional, Come See a Man, that was written by 12 amazing women in our community, sharing their experiences of healing and holding on to their faith. If you're not in the UK and you'd like to attend the conference, send me an email so that we can send you your link for registration, because there's going to be a special streamed version of the conference for just the people that are not in the UK. If you're in the UK, you don't have access to online, just the people that are abroad. Thank you for joining me. Tomorrow, I'm talking specific about post-traumatic growth. What are some of the things how does our life show up differently when we've experienced post-traumatic growth? And what are some of the things that will be evident and evidence for us? In our child healing group last week, a woman said, how do I measure growth, Joanna? How do I know when I'm growing? What are the areas that, how can I tell that I'm healing and I'm growing? And we spent some time on that. We're going to spend some time on it this week, Thursday, I think it's the 11th week of our inner child healing group. It's a 12-week program. And so I'm going to talk about post-traumatic growth tomorrow, so that you can see for yourself your growth, what you're doing. Because sometimes we can be in the thick of it for so long that we can't see when we're growing. We can't see the amazing ways that our lives are changing, how we're showing up different relationally, and how our time at the well with Jesus, our time in therapy, our time in groups, watching all the videos, doing all the things. Sometimes we're so stuck still. We're feeling like we're in the valley still, and we can't see that we're growing. And I bet you are. I bet you're growing amazingly. I bet you're doing things so differently. I bet you're applying coping strategies, but you can't see it. But we want to see it, we want to celebrate it, and we want to run away with joy as this woman did. Thank you for joining me. Join me tomorrow as we continue this conversation focusing on post-traumatic growth. Have a great day.